Brevet Major William Stephen Raikes Hodson was a British leader of a irregular light cavalry during the Indian Rebellion of 1857. He was known as Hodson of Hodson's Horse. His most celebrated action in British 19th-century annals was to apprehend the King of Delhi. The following day he rode to the enemy camp, heavily outnumbered by the rebels, and demanded the surrender of the Mughal princes who were leading the rebellion around Delhi, and killed them. It needs to be noted that in the course of the mutiny a number of male members of Bahadur Shah II's family were killed by East India Company forces, who were imprisoned or exiled the surviving members of the Mughal dynasty. Furthermore, Bahadur Shah II was tried on 4 counts, 2 of aiding rebels, 1 of treason, and being party to the murder of 49 people. However, as Hodson had previously guaranteed his life, the emperor eventually died peacefully of old age. Hodson's career received praise from a number of senior military commanders such as General Hugoff, but there were certain dissenting voices from other members of the military. There were also a few politicians who felt the killing of Mughal princes by Hodson had done dishonor. However, Hodson's career received praise from more senior politicians, including the Prime Minister and Minister for India. Hodson is credited with being jointly responsible for the introduction of the khaki uniform. Early career. William Hodson was born on the 9th of March 1821 at Maysmore Court, near Gloucester, third son of the Rev. George Hodson. He was educated at Rugby School under Dr. Arnold and at Trinity College, Cambridge. He accepted a cadetship in the Indian Army at the age of 23. Joining the 2nd Bengal Grenadiers, he went through the First Anglo-Sikh War. It was unusual for the time for William Hodson to be a Cambridge graduate and keen linguist. A contemporary described him as tall man with yellow hair, a pale, smooth face, heavy moustache, and large, restless, rather unforgiving eyes, a perfect swordsman, nerves like iron, and a quick, intelligent eye. Hodson delighted in fighting, and his favorite weapon was the hog spear. He was a brilliant horseman with the capacity to sleep in the saddle. He was described as the finest swordsman in the army. The initial assistance he gave in organizing the newly formed Corps of Guides in December 1846 had been one of Sir Henry Lawrence's projects, in which Hodson excelled. The Guides Corps had Lt. Harry Burnett Lumsden as its commandant and Lt. Hodson as adjutant. Significantly, among the duties assigned to Hodson, his responsibility was for equipping the new regiment, which necessitated his choosing the regiment's uniform. With Lumsden's approval, Hodson decided upon a lightweight uniform of khaki color, or drab, as it was then referred to. This would be comfortable to wear and make them invisible in a land of dust. Accordingly, in May 1848 he liaised with his brother Rev. George H. Hodson in England to send drab cloth for 900 men as well as 300 carbines. As a result, Hodson and Lumsden had the joint distinction of being the first officers to clothe a regiment in khaki, which many view as the precursor of modern camouflage uniform. Later on he was transferred to the Civil Department as Assistant Commissioner in 1849 and stationed at Amritsar, and from there he travelled in Kashmir and Tibet. In 1852 he was appointed Commandant of the Corps of Guides. In addition, for it to be abnormal for the time for British soldiers in India to be a Cambridge graduate, William also enjoyed classical literature for relaxation, and was a keen linguist. This included having an interest in learning the main language of his host country at the time. On his arrival in India he started first learning Hindustani, and later Persian, with the help and encouragement from his mentor Sir Henry Lawrence. This apparently was of intellectual and cultural interest to him, particularly as his army quarters offered him little in the way of culture reading matter, save for the usual copy of the Bible and works of Shakespeare. He even asked for a formidable collection of classics from his brother, although he probably didn't see anything unusual in spending 3 hours a day studying Persian. He even found it relaxing to read and translated Xenophon. Indian Rebellion. At the outset of the Indian Mutiny, he made his name by riding with dispatches from General Anson from Karnal to Meerut and back again, a distance of 152 miles in 72 hours, through country full of hostile cavalry. Following this feat, the commander-in-chief empowered him to raise and command a new regiment of 2,000 irregular horse, which became famed as Hodson's Horse, and placed him at the head of the intelligence department. In his double role of cavalry leader and intelligence officer, Hodson played a large part in the reduction of Delhi. As already indicated, his major achievement at this time was the capture of the Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah II, and his major discredit the execution of the 3 Mughal princes, Bahadur's sons Mirza Mughal and Mirza Khizr Sultan, and his grandson Mirza Abu Bakr. The British knew that the old Emperor of India was proving to be a focus for the uprising and the mutineers, and that he, his sons and their army were camped just outside Delhi at Humayun's tomb. The general in command said he could not spare a single European. Hodson volunteered to go with 50 of his irregular horsemen. This request was turned down, but after some persuasion Hodson obtained from Colonel Archdale Wilson permission to ride out to where the enemy were encamped. Hodson rode 6 miles through enemy territory into the camp, containing some 6,000 or more armed mutineers, who were said to have laid down their arms when he ordered them to. Some have seen this surrender as symbolic of the decline of the Turks and Mughals in India, which had started after Aurangzeb, but the fact was that the mutineers, or rebels, at Delhi were simply demoralized after the hard-fought defeat and severe privations. Here he accepted the surrender of Bahadur Shah II, the last of the Mughal emperors of India, promising him that his life would be spared. The capture of the emperor in the face of a threatening crowd dealt the mutineers a heavy blow. As a sign of surrender, the emperor handed over his arms, which included 2 magnificent swords, one with the name Nadir Shah and the other with the seal of Jahangir engraved upon it, which Hodson intended to present to Queen Victoria. The swords he took from the emperor were given to the queen as a symbol of the emperor's surrender and are still held in the queen's collection. The sons of the king, the princes, had refused to surrender, demanding guarantees of safety, and on the following day, with a few horsemen, Hodson went back and demanded the princes' unconditional surrender. Again a crowd of thousands of mutineers gathered, and Hodson ordered them to disarm, which they did. He sent the princes on with an escort of 10 men, while with the remaining 90 he collected the arms of the crowd. The princes were mounted on a bullock cart and driven towards the city of Delhi. As they approached the city gate, a crowd of people again started to gather around them, and Hodson ordered the 3 princes to get off the cart and to strip off the top garments. He then took a carbine from one of his troopers and shot them dead before stripping them of the signet rings, turquoise armbands and bejeweled swords. The bodies were ordered to be displayed in front of a kotwali, or police station, and left there to be seen by all. The gate near where they were killed is still called the Kuni Darwaza, or Bloody Gate. The actions were controversial even at the time. The future Frederick Roberts, first Earl Roberts, then a junior officer serving in the Delhi campaign, would later call it a blot, and criticized an otherwise brilliant officer for exposing himself to criticism. Other first-hand accounts, such as William W. Ireland, also called into question the exigency of his actions. His service record showed that he had often behaved behaved in arbitrary fashion before, and he had previously been removed from civil duties by the then Governor-General of India, Lord Dalhousie. Accusations of corruption subsequently proved unfounded. In 1855, two separate main charges were brought against Hodson. The first was that he had arbitrarily imprisoned a Yusufzai Pathan chief named Kadir Khan, on suspicion of being concerned in the murder of Colonel Maxon. The man was acquitted, and Lord Dalhousie removed Hodson from his civil functions and remanded him to his regiment on account of his lack of judgment and gross negligence. The second charge was more serious, amounting to an accusation of misappropriation of the funds of his regiment. He was tried by a court of inquiry, who found that his conduct to natives had been unjustifiable and oppressive, that he had used abusive language to his native officers and personal violence to his men, and that his system of accounts was calculated to screen peculation and fraud. However, a subsequent inquiry was carried out by Major Raynald Taylor. Taylor's investigation took 2 months, during which time he went through every item received or paid out by Hodson over the 2 years of his command. By the end of his investigation into the record of Hodson's accounts, Taylor found it to be an honest and correct record from beginning to end. It has been irregularly kept, but every transaction, for the least to the greatest, has been noted in it, and is traceable to the individual concerned. During a tour through Kashmir with Sir Henry Lawrence, he kept the person Sir Henry could never obtain an account from him. Subsequently, Sir Henry's younger brother Sir George Lawrence accused him of embezzling the funds of the Lawrence Asylum at Cassulali, while Sir Neville Chamberlain in a published letter says of the third brother, Lord Lawrence, "I am bound to say that Lord Lawrence had no opinion of Hodson's integrity in money matters. He has often discussed Hodson's character in talking to me, and it was to him a regret that a man possessing so many fine gifts should have been wanting in a moral quality which made him untrustworthy." Finally, on one occasion Hodson spent £500 of the pay due to Lieutenant Godby, and under threat of exposure was obliged to borrow the money from a local banker named Bashar Ali through one of his officers. Financial matters. Throughout his career, Hodson was dogged by accusations of, at best, negligence in financial matters, and, at worst, theft. He was investigated on more than one occasion, but nothing was ever proved. His detractors claim he was a looter. His supporters say that these accusations came from those who disliked his manner and his military success. The Rev. G.H. Hodson states in his book that he obtained the inventory of his brother's possessions made by the Committee of Adjustment, and it contained no articles of loot, and Sir Charles Gough, president of the committee, confirmed this evidence. This statement is totally incompatible with Sir Henry Daly's. Sir Henry Norman stated that to his personal knowledge Hodson remitted several £1,000s to Calcutta, which could only have been obtained by looting. On the other hand, again, Hodson died a poor man. His effects, which included a ring, watch, Bible and prayer book, and a miniature, were sold for only £170. General remarked there was nothing in his boxes but what an officer might legitimately and honorably have in his possession. His widow did not have money enough to pay for her passage home, and she had to apply to the Compassionate Fund for assistance, which was granted. She was given apartments by the Queen at Hampton Court, and left only £400 at her death. On the 11th of March 1858, Hodson's regiment was in Lucknow, and while storming the Begum's palace he was shot. His last words were, "I hope I have done my duty." On the evening of the 12th of March 1858, his body was buried in the garden of La Martiniere, Lucknow. His grave is still located within the grounds of La Martiniere College. The memorial bears the inscription, "Here lies all that could die of William Stephen Raikes Hodson. Legacy." In parliamentary speeches made on 14 April 1859, the Prime Minister, Earl of Derby, and a Minister for India, Lord Stanley, paid tribute to Hodson. Lord Stanley is quoted as saying, "Major Hodson, of the Guides, who, in his short but brilliant military career, displayed every quality which a cavalry officer should possess. Nothing is more remarkable in glancing over the biography of Major Hodson that has just appeared than the variety of services in which he was engaged, unless it be the energy and versatility with which he turned from one to the other, at one time displaying his personal courage and skill as a swordsman in conflict with the Sikh fanatics, then transferred to the civil service, the duties of which he performed as though he had passed his whole life at the desk, afterwards recruiting and commanding the Corps of Guides, and, lastly, taking part in the operations before Delhi, volunteering for every enterprise in which life could be hazarded or glory could be won. He crowded into the brief space of 12 eventful years the services and adventures of a long life. He died before the reward which he had earned could be received, but he attained that reward which doubtless he most coveted, the consciousness of duty nobly done, and the assurance of enduring military renown." The Prime Minister said of him, "Doubtless many have fallen who, if they had been spared, might have risen to greatest eminence and have held the highest stations in public service. I allude to Hodson, a model of chiefs of irregular forces. By his valor, his rigid discipline, and careful attention to his men's real wants, comforts, desires, and even prejudices, he had obtained an influence which was all but marvelous. This enabled him to lead his troops formed and disciplined into any danger and into any conflict as if they had been British soldiers. He has met of soldiers' death. It will be long before the people lose the memory of Hodson." General Hugh Gough said of him, "A finer or more gallant soldier never breathed. He had the true instincts of a leader of men. As a cavalry soldier he was perfection, a strong seat, a perfect swordsman, quick and intelligent." This recognition of Hodson by the Prime Minister was reflected in the special pension granted his widow by the Secretary of State for India in Council, who declared it was testimony of the high sense entertained of the gallant and distinguished services of the late Brevet Major W. S. R. Hodson. Her Majesty Queen Victoria honoured Major Hodson posthumously by granting his widow a grace and favour apartment at Hampton Court Palace in consideration of the distinguished service of your late husband in India. He features as one of the main characters in James Lees's novel about the Mutiny, Follow the Drum, which describes his part in these events and his death in some detail. Family. On 5 January 1852, he married Susan, daughter of Captain C. Henry R.N. and widow of John Mitford of Exbury, at Calcutta Cathedral, whom he had known and liked for some time prior to her first marriage. A daughter, Olivia, was born in 1853 but died in July 1854.